Yo, alright, so in the videos I have made recently, there have been a lot of little details that I've had to overlook because of uh, a difference in focus and what the video is from the tips that I want to share. So in this video, I will be going over 10 very basic general tips that you might not be aware of regarding things you can do in Heroforge. And the reason I'm doing these in a separate video is because, as I mentioned before, they don't necessarily fit into the other videos I was making, and they're also not big enough for me to warrant making videos about them alone. So the first tip that I want to go over is something you might notice if you're doing Hero Forge, especially medieval models, is that a lot of these gauntlets that they give you are simply just too bulky, and some of the time the wrist guards that do look decent that aren't too bulky, such as these. Um, they don't suffice because they leave the hand completely bare. So a thing you can do is you can turn the hand into a robotic prosthetic, and now it looks like you have yourself a gauntlet. So if you color this with some kind of plate color, then you see, obviously you wouldn't want these in between bits to be plate, but this is just as a quick showcase of what you can do. And this also works with a lot of other gloves. For example, the samurai glove looks very good with this because now the fingers are covered by the metal bit, whilst the gauntlet itself is visible as well. And yeah, there's a lot of these you can do these with. But for now, I'll move on to tip number two, which is also regarding these body things, and that is in head. Now, robotic features might look, I mean, this is just cursed, but this the robotic features mask might look as though it's purely meant for sci-fi models, but if you take a pure black color, and I mean pure black, like something like this, and you color the eyes and you remove the eyebrows and you put on, say, a hood and obviously some kind of chest piece, and you also cover up the neck, then now suddenly this looks like it could be a metal mask, which can all be used for all sorts of meanings. You can make some kind of faceless cult or whatever. It's up to you. But speaking of gear, if I change this to a more metal chest piece, let's say the Spartan breastplate, something you can do that I see a lot of people neglect is this is if you're on a male model, the bust option doesn't only have to be for women. You can use this to make a chest piece look bulkier. As long as you don't go over like the 30-40 mark, it will not look like your character has boobs yet. So you can edit the, yeah, I mean, yeah, I know it's a literal boob slider, but you can use this for a slight subtle effect. I mean, you can see the difference here in just how bulky the chest looks on this, which can sometimes be useful. Um, and Now then, I am going to go over to tip number four, which is I'm going to be using a different model for this. I'll go to this one that I gave the link out for the other day. And the tip here is that if you paint over an eyelid completely, but you use the eyeshadow decal and the lower part of the eyeshadow decal, this one here, you paint that dark way. Hold on a minute. This is wrong now. I believe it was, is it this one? No. Is it this one? Yes, here we go. On the third one, I had it. And you color the lower eyeshadow with darker so that it looks like eyelashes. I know up close this also looks very cursed, but from a distance you'll notice that this looks like the character has closed eyes, and this is easier to achieve. You don't necessarily have to use decals for this. You can just color over the eyelids, but it will look more convincing if you make if you make something that looks like eyelashes underneath, which is what the eyeshadow is for. And moving on to tip number five, which I will also use this for, is on a lot of the Hero Forge dresses, there's a distinct lack of arm. Yeah, I mean you have of arm decoration. You have one which covers the wrists a little bit, but as for the most part, the arms will be bare. And what I've done in this case is I've used two artificial arms to essentially look like I honestly don't know what they're called, but you know, these fancy dress arms, and then you can color them, and because they're so sleek and thin, because they're meant to look like they're part of the arm itself, they look like very nice dress gloves in that sense. And that is us done with this model, and which moves us on to tip number 6, which is werewolves. And you might notice this canine face. It's okay, but it looks very suffice to say, it doesn't look quite as menacing as you would like a werewolf to look like. So if you want to make a proper menacing looking werewolf, I would not recommend using the actual canine face. I would use the kobold face. And here's an updated version of the same model. And you can see this looks much more ferocious, much more, well, evil, I guess. A werewolf doesn't have to be evil, but you get the point. I know it's a little bit counterintuitive, but it just it just looks. I mean, compare these, right? You have the canine face here and the kobold head here. Now, it helps if you have a hood over the top of it. It will help the model appear more. I mean, I can show you if I remove the hood, it will be harder with a kobold head to make it look decent up above, which is why I prefer a hood. But you know, there's a lot of things, and a little bonus tip here: you can actually still put beards on these, by the way. So I could slap down a if I put this, yeah, you see, you can have a little beard on your werewolf if you want. Um, Now let's go back to the abomination of tips I have up here. Something, a little thing that I noticed a while back is, well, the first part I didn't notice a while back, but let's say we take any pair of pants. Let's say we take these, and we want this character to look really bulky, maybe even a bit fat, and we raise the upper this. Now you'll notice a distinct problem. This chest piece might look okay, um, but why does this waist thing here go so broad when I'm doing this? And there is no solution to this directly unless you're using two models. However, there is one thing you can do, which is a specific pair of armor legs will actually ignore this feature altogether, and I will show you if I go back down and I go to the scale mail legs here. These ones, for some reason, I don't know why, but they completely ignore this feature. So if I drag this up, see, it doesn't change at all. I mean, the belly goes up, obviously, but let's say I, it's, I don't know why, but these legs are very, very useful if you're trying to raise the upper body size, but not the lower. And okay, that moves us on to tip number 8, which is the usage of pouches to make them look like they're directly part of coats. And I'll show you how you could use pretty much any of them, but if you go inside and you go to all new type in pouch, let's use, for example, these here. If you edit these specifically, this is obviously not too advanced, but if you edit these a little meticulously, you can make these pouches look like they are directly part of the coat itself, and on some things, this is not a coat I'm going to show you, but rather a pair of legs. On these new pair of legs, you see this little strap. You could even lower these all the way down until it looks like this pouch is part of or hanging from that leather strap instead. Like these are just some little tips and tricks you can use to make these side things look like they're more part of the gear you're trying to make. And okay, the next tip, number 9, is also regarding gloves like the first one, and that is the scaly claws. Now these look okay, right? But the problem with them generally is that they just stop here at the wrist, which is not very nice unless you have an armor that goes all the way down. But if you add a prosthetic hand underneath like this, and you color these, let's say we want a golden claw hand, we color this like that, and then we take this, no, not the other one. We color it all like that, and then the inside we also color the same. Boom. Now suddenly it looks like the prosthetic hand is part of the gauntlet, and we have ourselves a proper dragon claws gauntlet thing here, you know? And speaking of more medieval things, tip number 10. This is something that I've seen other people do a fair bit, so it might not be new to you, but there will also be a bonus tip after this. Now you can there are a few sheathed I'm Swedish, forgive my pronunciation, sheathed swords, but the issue is they're very limited. I mean, you have this, you have this, you have this, but it's not a lot, and they're very small. So what you can do with some of these older, bulkier swords, I know the bulkier swords are usually a curse because they look like trash compared to the newer ones, but the fact that they're bulky can actually be used to your advantage if you decide to make this thing, rather than a blade, look like a scabbard. So let's take this. If we color everything else normally, so boom, boom. Let's use that for the hilt, and this again for that. Now, you achieve this kind of effect where it looks like, rather than the blade itself, this thing is actually just the scabbard, and the sword itself can be pulled out of there and will probably look thinner and better in reality. It's another one of those little illusions. So that is the 10 tips, but there's one bonus tip I want to show you. And if you're coming from Reddit, you'll probably recognize this model, which is this. And before you ask, no, the tip is not going to have to do with this lighting, because this video is only featuring tips that are for non-pro members. But it does kind of have with lighting to do, in the sense that these eyes, you might notice, are a little bit more vibrant than usual. And the reason for that is I have pulled up the, let's see, I have pulled up the glow significantly. Now, there's usually a problem with using glow. If you have a normal eyeball, yeah, you can already see what I'm going for. So this would be a normal eye, right? And if I pull up the glow, you can see that it significantly makes the whites of the eye look glowing, but and it does affect the irises as well, but the irises don't stand out because the whites turn so hella fucking white and glowy and bright. So what you do is you lower the eyeball brightness down like far below gray, honestly, and you keep raising the glow, and you'll see that you achieve this very kind of spooky effect of these kind of evil glowing looking eyes. And yes, that is how you more effectively use eye glow, in my opinion. So there you go. There's 10 tips and a bonus tip. I hope that some will find this useful. And if you like the video, press like. If you dislike the video, then press dislike. And goodbye.